In the last section, we spoke about why this expectation right here left a little bit to be desired. At present, our app.test file has knowledge of exactly what that comment box component is doing, and that's really not ideal. So in this section, we're going to start moving towards a refactor of this line of code right here to make sure that our app test is only aware of the existence of the comment box, rather than having knowledge of its internal implementation. We're going to first start off by taking a look at essentially the line of code that we eventually want to write here. So I do not really want to write the code that says, look at this inner HTML and figure out whether or not the inner contents of the comment box around. Instead, I would really prefer to write something that looks like this. Expect that div to have an instance of comment box. This would be much more ideal. I would love to write out a line of code that says, yeah, that div that we just rendered something into has an instance of the comment box inside of it. And then we could kind of just let React figure out what to do and let Jest figure out what to do with this line of code. Now, unfortunately, you and I cannot really write out this line of code directly right here. There's nothing inside of our project right now that has a matcher like this, totally undefined, so if we ran this code as it stands, we'd definitely get an error. Now, we could definitely add in a custom matcher of our own to kind of implement this finding behavior and make sure that the div contains the comment box component, but that would involve a lot of work on our behalf. We would have to get a really deep understanding of how React works to be able to write out a line of code that does this right here. So rather than going through all that extra work, you and I are going to instead install another library that's going to let us write out a line of code that's going to eventually look very similar to this right here. So this extra library that you and I are going to install is called Enzyme. Enzyme is an open source repository or open source package created by Airbnb specifically made for testing React components a little bit easier. And it allows us to write out code that looks a little bit closer to this. We can say, hey, Enzyme, I expect that this rendered component has an instance of some other component inside of it. And Enzyme is just going to take over and figure out what to do for us. So that's the goal of Enzyme. It just lets us write expectations that are a little bit more closely configured with how React works. Now I'm going to first delete that line of code right there because that's not precisely what we're going to write. And I'm going to uncomment the old one just to keep that around. And then we're going to get to installing that Enzyme package. So let's get to it. To install Enzyme, I'm going to first change on over to my terminal. I'm going to stop my test runner over here by hitting Control-C. Then, while still inside of my project directory, I'm going to install two packages with npm that are going to allow us to get set up with Enzyme inside of our project. So I'll run npm install --save enzyme, and then we're going to get a second package. And I want to be really clear before we write anything right here, depending upon the version of React that you're using, the name of the package that you're going to install is going to be slightly different. So the overall name that we're going to use is enzyme-adapter-react- and then here's the important part, so don't hit enter just yet. The last part of this package name right here is going to change depending upon the version of React that you're using. So really quickly, I want you to flip back over to your code editor, and then I want you to open up your package.json file. So inside of here, in the dependencies section, you're going to find the entry for React. Now me personally, I'm running React version 16 right now. You might be running version 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever it is. You want to find the version of React that you're using, so I'm 16, then you're going to take that version and you're going to go back over to your terminal and you're going to put that number at the very end. So you want enzyme-adapter-react- and then whatever version of React that you're using. I'm 16, you might be 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever you're using. So once I get that in there, I'll then hit enter and I'm good to go. Now while that's installing, we're going to do one more little piece of configuration. As you might be able to guess from this package that we're installing, the version 16 of Enzyme Adapter React, well, Enzyme behaves slightly different depending upon the version of React that we're using. So we have to do just a tiny touch of setup of Enzyme before we can actually use it inside of our test setup. So we're going to go through that setup right now. So to set up Enzyme inside of our project, I'm going to go back over to my project directory, my code editor, excuse me, and I'm going to find my src directory. Then inside that src directory, I'm going to make a new file called setuptests.js. Now the name of this file right here is extremely important, so please make sure that you name this file setuptests.js as well with the exact same capitalization. Then once you create that file, we'll go ahead and open it up, and then we're going to add just a tiny bit of code to this thing. So at the very top, we'll write import enzyme from enzyme, and please do check the spelling on it. And we'll do import adapter from enzyme adapter React. And then again, whatever version of React you're using here, I'm using version 16, so I'm going to put down -16. So if you have React versions 16, 17, 18, 19, make sure you put the appropriate number here. Then underneath that, we'll say enzyme.configure, and we'll pass in an object that says adapter is new adapter. And that's pretty much it. That's all the setup that we have to do. Now, just a little bit behind the scenes here, the name of this file is very special because anytime Jest starts up inside of our project, it's going to look for a file with the name of setuptest.js inside the src directory, and if Jest finds that file, it's going to automatically execute it before any other code inside of our project gets loaded. And so that makes this file right here a perfect location to do a little bit of setup of our Jest test suite before any actual tests start to run. So we took advantage of that to do this initial setup of Enzyme, and now we can make use of Enzyme anywhere inside of our project, or more specifically, inside of any of our test files. All right, so again, the entire purpose of installing Enzyme was to give us the ability to write out some expectations that just work with React a little bit better. We then installed Enzyme, and then we wired it up to our project. So let's take a pause right here. We'll come back in the next section, and we're going to rewrite this expectation to work a little bit more nicely with React and Enzyme. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.